welcome back to our Simple Healthy Life podcast, where our goal is to have insightful, real conversations on topics that we find interesting. And today we have an incredible topic. It's an event that Ryan and I took part in or ran and created, put together for an organization called the Safe Harbor Coalition. They're out of Cohasset. We partnered with them and the recreational department to do a mindfulness day for what amounted to be over 60 kids, middle school age. And we put that together so that we could teach them a little bit about mindfulness, a little bit about movement, and a little bit about nutrition. No better person to talk about nutrition than Ryan. So what'd you think? Let's start there. What'd you think of the day as a whole?
Yeah, it was super interesting. It's stuff that it's been a while since I had done, stuff like that, and especially working with kids specifically. Of course, I work with kids on a daily basis, but in a group is definitely a little different. But I was super excited to get in front of them and see them take in the information, and it's so interesting, man. The attention span of kids, right? It's like, you and I were talking a lot leading up about, keeping things interactive and succinct. And, I think we learned as we talked with them what was working for that specific group of kids. And, one of the more interesting things is that, of course, the topic of mindfulness is such an abstract topic for them, right? Like, I don't think any of them had heard of it. They might have heard the term, but they certainly didn't know what it was. But they definitely know what it is now, which is good. So they definitely learned.
Yeah, they definitely learned. One of the things that we'll tell the audience that we did, which I thought was clever, so I'm giving us props, was we gave them a test at the end. And that test was very specific to the information that we shared with them. It was multiple choice, and 87% of the kids got 100 points on the test, or all the questions right. There was only 4 questions. It's summer. We wanted to be fair to them. But the way the test was positioned, they couldn't have guessed the answers. So I was really proud of that. I felt like we were able to come with some valuable information and share that with them. And I really feel strongly that we presented it in a way that kept their attention. We really worked hard at dividing the day in a way that would keep their attention for short periods of time. Shout out to Lauren Folan, who's not here with us today, but she did a movement section that allowed the kids in the middle of the day to get moving and really connect to their bodies. One of the things that I did was I asked, and I think you might have done this too, I asked each group what they learned in the previous breakout sections. And the answers were so awesome to me because they were so wide-ranging. And it was like one kid would say something and the other kid would say something, and nobody really repeated themselves, with the exception of, and I think what's the star of the day for me was your story about your boy Henry. Go ahead and talk a little bit about that, would you?
Yeah. That was one of the things that we really picked up from the event as a whole, is storytelling really important, right? And what you're referencing is we talked to obviously we had all these different kind of groups that the kids were in, and they were learning about the topics of nutrition and mindfulness and movement and etc. But in my group, I was talking about mindful eating, and I incorporated a story of Henry Mollison, who is the most studied man, I think, in history, and he has 12,000 citations in research journals, and so I find that interesting, and so I kind of like built it up like that. Actually, it was funny in the intro to my seminar, kind of like my group. I said we're going to talk about mindful eating, we're going to talk about the hunger scale, we're going to talk about brain surgery, we're going to talk about aliens, and so I kind of in the intro gave them this like really kind of crazy sounding summary of what we're going to talk about, and I did that I think more so in the 2 later sessions, and so I found that to be kind of a good, like, ooh, aliens, right? But the story about Henry, they all loved. So he's the most studied man in history, and the reason is because he had very severe epilepsy and went in to get this repaired with like lobotomy, kind of stuff. So I don't know how old he was. He must have been, late 30s, 40s, something like that when he got this surgery. But essentially, he maintained all of his memories, thoughts, actions, behaviors prior to surgery. But after surgery, he became total amnesiac and had like a 60-second memory, essentially. And so no short-term memory after the surgery. So maybe safe to say that the surgery wasn't a success, although they did get rid of his seizures. He then became a 60-second man. So, but the interesting part about it, and this is why I incorporated it into mindful eating, is because Henry was in these studies. Some of them, not all 12,000, but some of them, they would test how he eats, and so they'd give him a meal. Say, Henry, are you hungry? Yeah, I'm hungry, and he would eat his meal. And then they come back 30 minutes later. Henry, are you hungry? Yeah, of course I'm hungry. Haven't eaten. And they do it again and again and again. He would like essentially not stop eating if prompted. And the interesting thing is Henry still has a body. He still has his hormones. He still has his overall physiology, but didn't really have his brain to encode a lot of these the cues and the fact that he's eating. And so the big point of the story is that we have to be mindful eating. Otherwise, we're going to kind of be like Henry. We're not going to remember that we've eaten. We're going to pay less attention. Our brain's not going to encode that fact that we've eaten. And we'll probably either undereat or overeat, depending on the individual. But being mindful and paying attention to your meal is essential to how we operate as humans. And it's essential to healthy eating. And Henry demonstrates exactly what happens when you're completely unmindful, right? And not obviously not his choice, but that's just the way it was. And so, like the theme through some of the groups was let's not be like Henry. Let's pay attention. And so, so they loved it. They loved it. And they kept saying Henry, blah 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 blah, and they'd always bring it up when we're asking them in future groups. But I'm glad that they brought it up to you.
Oh, absolutely. One of the kids said exactly the same words. Don't be like Henry. What'd you learn? Don't be like Henry. I had to ask him to elaborate. It was pretty funny.
Yeah.
Another thing that and I'd like to hear your opinion on this. We haven't, just so the audience knows, we actually haven't debriefed on this topic yet, but I'm very interested to hear. One of the things that we really tried to get out of this for the kids was to teach them that in many ways, mindfulness can be simple as checking in with yourself. Mm-hmm. And so many people, not just kids, never do. Mm-hmm. Maybe never. Some people go as far as to do it, once in the morning or maybe even once at night. But the way we approached it with the kids was we had them take 5 deep breaths as a way to turn their attention from the outside to the inside. Then we had them look at their thoughts, and we prompted them a little bit to say ways you could look at your thoughts. Are they coming in fast or slow? Are they negative or positive? Do you like them or not? Are they all over the place or on a certain topic? And then we had them listen to their body, which is something that throughout the day, the theme really turned into listening to their body through the movement and through the nutrition, things that we just take for granted. Our body tells us we have to go to the bathroom. Do I? Our body tells us if we're hungry or not. Are we? Our body tells us if we're hurt or not. Are we? Our body tells us if we're anxious or nervous or concerned or excited. And one of the things I'm really proud of is at the end of each one of those check-ins, you could you could tell which kids tried, which kids actively participated, and which kids just closed their eyes and thought about lunch. Yeah. So what did you think? What did you think of those exercises? What did you think of the approach, and what did you think of kind of the way it went?
Yeah. I love the fact that we were able to talk about something as, I guess, esoteric as thoughts, right? Even as I think back for myself growing up, not a single person, at no point was I ever talked to about my thoughts. Never. It was like, it's so crazy because we live in these thoughts all day, for most of us, and no one talks about it. No one brings it up, especially to kids, right? And so to me, it was really nice to at least begin to have the conversation about like, hey, you're having some thoughts, and that's okay. And some of them are going to be bad and negative, and that's okay. It's just kind of part of the brain. It's kind of how the brain works. And by the way, everyone has these thoughts, right? It's not just you. Like, and that's what's so like isolating about the idea in general, is that obviously they're having all these crazy thoughts, right? Especially with how like distracted and everything that they are, but no one ever says anything about it, right? And so so it was nice to have them like actually be checking in, and especially after that first check-in we did when we had them all together, all 60 something kids together, and we introduced mindfulness, or you introduced mindfulness, and you said, all right, everyone close your eyes, and we're going to take a couple deep breaths together. And after that, they definitely were like, there was a good chunk of them who clearly participated and were clearly a lot more attentive and calm afterwards, and I thought that was so cool. And then in each subsequent like breakout group, we had them check in. And so, of course, like for mine, I had them check in and listen to their hunger or fullness cues, and I had them like, kind of rate it. And so, yeah, I think it was really nice for them to, actively check in with their bodies, because it's something that we don't do, right? Even you and I mean, I don't know about you, but unless I take an actual dedicated moment to check in, it's not happening. Way too busy to be able to check in. And it sounds crazy, but with one client after the other, then, coming and doing this or doing an event or whatever, it's really challenging to take a moment and check in. It's like you get so pulled into things. And so like to start cultivating the practice in these young kids to, take a moment and assess where you're at, and maybe that then impacts your future actions and how you take care of yourself, and so that it doesn't externalize and something that you don't want to see, right?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I'm proud of the approach that we took. So these kids, they got 4 opportunities to do that. And we approached it as a practice and let them know that they may feel it's silly or difficult the first time, and first 10 times, first however many times. But they did get 4 opportunities to do it. And one of the pieces of feedback that I got when I was asking, and you're always happy when someone gives you the answer you're looking for. One little kid said, emotions are a language your body uses.
That was awesome.
I was so happy to hear that.
Yeah, that was the first kid. The first, like, as you pulled them up on stage and said, now you teach us. Literally the first response is, emotions are a different language, and you need to learn how to interact with them. I was like, oh my God, where are we?
Yeah, it was awesome. Yeah. It was great. I love the other ones too. You have almost 60,000 thoughts a day. Yeah. I thought that was great too. Yeah. So it's nice to hear that they felt whether they knew it or not, they retained the information and they could give it back to us. So yeah, great day, a lot of fun. Super grateful, honored to be the people that they asked to help guide those kids in a way. And, for me, to take a step back, for me personally, and I wrote this in my journal, this was something that I felt really great about. Because in my previous life, in my previous career, I always felt as though I needed somebody else to get me started or push me or help me. And this is something that I created, brought in experts, really spent a lot of time thinking about how we would do it, and to execute on that day, and to have you there, and to have Lauren there, and to have Erica there filming it all for us, really made me feel good. So first and foremost, thank you. And thank you to Erica, and thank you to Lauren, and thank you to everybody that put that day together. I feel strongly that this will be the first of many to come.
Yeah, no, I think you did a great job, and isn't that? I was thinking that like on the way here too, like how special to be able to, put together a pretty solid event, right? Like there was slides in the beginning, just like real fun slides with activities, and you had a nice creative intro, and interactive components to question answering, and then 3 different breakouts, and a snack involved, and movement involved, and yeah, it was a pretty extensive event, I think. And for you to, one, like, find the connections, build the team, put it all together, have it operate pretty flawlessly, not perfect, but for what it was, I think it was amazing. And just kind of like a testament to the power of, like, choice and putting thoughts into action, right?
Yeah, thank you. And so for those of you that don't know, Ryan and I got together the day before, and he could probably tell that I had some anxiety around it. And he sent me a nice text message that said, this is the path. It's the beginning of the path, and it won't be perfect, but it will be us doing the things that we love. And that really put my mind at ease. So thank you for that. In fact, my performance anxiety was really, it really wasn't on the day of, which is something I've never really dealt with. So I think what I'd like to do is just kind of talk a little bit about performance anxiety and kind of shift gears with you.
Yeah.
Now that it's fresh in my mind, we talk about performance anxiety as something that we might have had when we were younger, or we've had when, at some point we know what it looks like. But I can tell you how it presented itself for me this time. And this time was a very strange time for me. This time it was not the day of. The day of, I think my expertise, personality, practice, whatever it was, came in, and I didn't feel it that morning. I felt it for the 2 weeks leading up.
Yeah.
For some reason, I wanted to be perfect, and I wanted so badly to make an impact that I couldn't seem to come up with the words that are normally natural for me. Words like curiosity, excitement. I almost blanked completely on how to define mindfulness, and I do that all the time. It was an interesting thing. I also felt as though it was taking over my mind.
Yeah.
It was almost like for almost the 2 weeks leading up, I wasn't even present
Right.
in the times when I could be present, when the topics were not anything to do with this presentation or this topic.
Yeah.
So what about you? What was yours like?
Yeah, no, I agree that I kind of described it as it was taking up mental space, right? And not necessarily because of our role. I don't think in the event. It was like having it come together, and it being, like, obviously very important to both you and I and everyone involved. And so it's like that the nerves and performance anxiety that surround care, right? Like, if I didn't care, there would be no anxiety. Bah, 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 eat, whatever, like, it wouldn't be that big of a deal. But because I think there was a lot of care involved, it definitely occupied mental space. And leading up to it, I don't think I was particularly anxious, the 2 weeks or the 1 week before, but it definitely occupied space in my mind, and that made it a little harder to be present, I think. The night before, and then that morning, like, kind of like pulling into the parking lot, I was like, I kind of felt like that like butterfly kind of feeling, and certainly was a bit nervous. Just because I wanted everything to go well, and to have it operate in a manner that in which they learned. Obviously we wanted the message to come through, and so that day before, just sending you the text like, hey, we're implementing things, we're just doing it. And that's what I really enjoyed about the process as a whole, is that we had an idea, and it didn't stay an idea. We did it.
Brought it to life.
Yeah. And that to me is really special. And of course, like, what we learned from it, truly the most helpful, the most helpful tidbits, right? And that's the only way you can get better at those things, and get better at molding the youth, I suppose, is by getting out there and doing it. And to have that all come together in one event, and have it filmed and have, like, media around it, I think is actually quite cool.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
And something that I'm really looking forward to, taking the learnings and and doing even better next time. I know if I could take away a couple things, one of them is definitely more storytelling.
Yeah.
And I've read and heard that people retain some, I would just be making up a percent, but some higher percent of a story versus a non-story, especially when it's a personal story. So storytelling will be much more integrated in our next event. But some of the things that we did well was we really did a really great job of keeping their attention.
Yeah.
Once we told them that their attention only lasted 6 seconds, I think a lot of them kind of felt challenged.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that they did any better than 6 seconds, but how often do we do better than 6 seconds?
I was almost expecting you to say, "Hey, you have less of an attention than a goldfish," and I thought that would have been a funny tidbit, but it never came out. You were just talking about it too, and then push comes to shove, you didn't throw out the goldfish. I don't know if you didn't like the feedback from from MJ. MJ comes up to Lauren and I, and he's like, "Hey, did you know that goldfish have more of an attention span than humans?" And Lauren's first response is, "How do they even know that?" so I think that made you question yourself a little.
Totally did. I totally know. The crap, that's just something I read. But how do they know? What are these goldfish telling them that they know it's more than 6 seconds? In my breakout, I did make sure to tell them that they don't have fully functioning brains yet, fully
Nice.
formed brains yet, just to get their attention. And I think we can study that. That's, our brain doesn't fully develop until we're 25. So, interestingly enough.
So with this, like, as you were experiencing that, like, kind of like anxiety, the 2 weeks into that, what did you notice about that? How did you cope with that? Anything that you did specifically to say, well, I'm feeling this way, I got to do this?
Yeah, great question. It's what turned out to be an exercise in meditation for myself, because I know the answer for me is to allow myself a minute or two to let my brain rest. What I was searching for kept being these words, these perfect words that would relate to and keep the attention of 12 to 14-year-olds. And of course, I'm no longer 12 to 14, so I'm really not sure what they were. I'm not sure why I was looking for perfection. So I kept going back to, geez, I don't have the words. I'm not sure. And, we put up the slides about Simone Biles and Tom Brady and them being middle schoolers at one point as a way to relate to the middle schoolers, and showing them and showing Snoop Dogg and showing them all meditate. And for some reason, even though we had the visuals, I couldn't seem to come up with the words, even though I would sit and I would allow my brain to rest. Because when my brain rests, whatever it is out there, and I won't get too, I guess esoteric's the word, I won't get too out there, but for some reason, when my brain is at rest, whatever I'm searching for seems to come through, whether it's, not the first time or the second, as long as I continuously try. But what happened for me was the morning of, I think I finally came to the understanding that today was the day. There was nothing else to be done. I had everything that was going to be done was to be done. And I did my morning meditation, and the word curious came through. And really that was what I needed, because I wanted them to be curious. And once I realized that my intention was to get them to be curious, to get them to be interested in not just what I was saying, but the topics about themselves. And if you remember the way that we started the entire thing, that actually only came in the morning. We broke it down that essentially why they wanted to pay attention to us today was we were going to be talking about them. We were going to be talking specifically about what made them them. And we started with your thoughts, your emotions, and your actions. And I really saw a lot of the kids' kind of eyes open up when I delivered that information to them, that, hey, we're not just here talking about us, we're here talking about you. So the value to you paying attention is you're going to learn more about you.
Yeah. I thought that was super powerful. That was probably one of the most powerful things you had said. They're not learning about, Thomas Jefferson or, the whatever current events are going on. They're learning about you. And you had mentioned, I don't think you mentioned the Thomas Jefferson, but you said, today we're here to talk about you, right? And they probably don't get a lot of that, right? They probably don't ever hear that, right? And what self, unfortunately, it's true, but what self-care skills do they learn in school?
Right. Not many. Although shout out to Mrs. Phillips if we are recording this, because when I brought up box breathing, like more than one kid did the thing with his hand, and then said, and then I asked, of course, who started to make box breathing famous, and the answers were me, which thank you for that,
Yeah.
and Mrs. Phillips. So if there's a Mrs. Phillips in the Cohasset school system,
Nice.
shout out to Mrs. Phillips. But yeah, no, it was good. We know that this was something that was powerful and impactful, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to do it.
Yeah. And isn't that interesting to like leading up to everything, like you just trying to be like present, and how that does kind of remove anxiety in some sense. And I think the physical manifestations of like anxiety and stress come through, right? It's like as you walk up to the building, or as you like right before you start talking, you feel that like that like energy. It really truly is like this very energizing feeling when you really think about it. But if you can be present and get rid of the whole like mental chatter, the negative mental chatter that occurs with that like energizing feeling, it's quite a useful feeling.
Oh, I was not tired throughout the day for sure.
Yeah.
And it for me, it transformed into almost humor and laughter.
Yeah.
I probably laughed more during that day than I have in quite some time. I mean, the kids were hilarious.
Yeah.
You can never guess what's going to come out of their mouth. In fact, at one point, I wanted to flip the script on him, and I said, "All right, teach me something." And I got from a kid wearing a Celtics jersey in the back, Bob Cousy was the first MVP of the NBA in 1957. I was like, okay, thank you. And I remembered that. So good kudos to him. He taught me something for sure.
Yeah. You want to hear a funny one?
Yeah.
This is new. This will be new to MJ. So we're all hearing it for the first time. But when I was doing the mindful eating, and I guided them through this kind of like mindful eating exercise and paying attention, right? A lot of people are eating and they're on the phone and TV and they're not even paying attention. So we didn't want to be like Henry, so we practiced paying attention, and I had a clementine for one of them. And so I'm like, all right, let's pay attention. And then as we got to opening the clementine, like really paying attention to what this feels like. What does it really feel like to open the clementine, and etc. And one of the kids in one of the groups is like, "Wow, this must feel like what it's like to skin a human alive." And I'm like, "Oh my god!"
It's funny you bring up the clementines. One of the kids, I said, teach me something. And he goes, "Clementines are small oranges." And like instinctively, I was like, "You didn't know that?" And one of the camp counselors goes, "No, he didn't know that." And I was like, "Oh."
I remember that kid. Yeah. Someone was like, "He doesn't know what a clementine is." Okay, fair enough.
Fair enough. Yeah, that's the stuff that makes me so grateful to get to spend time doing that. And one thing I just think would be funny for the audience, you had asked how I dealt with my anxiety, and I had to do a quick self-check to say, am I really going to be upset if these 11-year-olds don't like me?
I remember you saying that.
I was like, I think that's bothering me, and I didn't. Of course, I didn't go back to my younger self or anything. I was just like, no, I'm definitely not. It's definitely going to be fine.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting? The we kind of almost default into those like what a caring what people think, and yet these are like to be fair, not even fully formed humans at that age, and who cares what they think? Someone said, I didn't actually hear this, but Erica filming mentioned this, and she was like, one of the kids said this guy is so Ohio, and I'm like, we're like, what does that mean? And so I look it up, and it's like, I'm pretty sure it means like strange. And so I in that kid's eyes, I was pretty strange, but sue me.
That's okay.
Yeah,
that's fine.
So performance anxiety, kind of like trying your best to orient to the present, because a lot of that anxiety obviously occurs in the mental plane, and if we're present, then we're not there. And so I found that to be quite helpful. our own self-talk, right? And I am confident, I am respected, I am knowledgeable, I am a professional. It's almost like imposter syndrome kind of feeling, right? Like you trying to reassure yourself that you are these things, and that is a practice. I always, share with people that we have this relationship to ourselves that does need to be cultivated in some way. You think about your relationship to a friend, right? If I'm going up to you, MJ, and I'm like, you're kind of trash at what you do, and you're a bad person, and you should question yourself. And I keep saying all these bad things. You were probably not going to be friends, right? You're going to not want to hang out with me. And so, same thing is true for ourselves. I like to think about that relationship to myself in a very similar way. It's like I objectify it almost, and I say, am I talking to myself in good ways? And we can't necessarily control the other little, negative mental chatter that happens, but we can certainly control the positive things. And so saying that to myself and treating myself well and all of that goes hand in hand with, I think, feeling prepared for anything. Right? You have to go in and say, I am feeling this way. I am feeling good. I am feeling confident. I am this. All right. So it's almost very similar to like what I do in jujitsu. If I know I'm like having a competition or a particularly competitive role, which happens in training every now and again, I can't go in being like, I'm gonna lose. I'm gonna, do so bad against this person's gonna like really, rock me the whole time. I can't say that, right? So like, practicing, I've got the skills. I want to work this. I'm gonna do just fine, and I think it goes a long way.
Oh, absolutely. And I think kind of on that note, I think we should wrap it up, because what you just said there really hit home with me. What we do as individuals and what we practice, we were able to use first and foremost for ourselves, and then share with these younger people. And I really am grateful for the opportunity to get that. And I really feel strongly that we did it effectively, and the results showed. So I'm really grateful. So thank you for you, and thank you for the people that decided that this idea of putting together a mindfulness program for these kids was a good idea. So thank you to the Safe Harbor Coalition. Thank you to Nicole Balashi for making it happen. Thank you for Cohasset and the Recreation Department for giving us the opportunity to share this with everybody. And we look forward to doing many more. So thank you all.
Yeah. And you can check us out on Spotify, YouTube, all the podcast platforms, and we'll catch you next time.